English 7 final exam accommodated. Worldwide loss of bees, a growing concern, by Alyssa Fleck. When we think of bees, we think of pesky, buzzing insects that sting us and ruin outdoor gatherings. We might wonder, how badly can we possibly need bees? The truth is, bees are an incredibly important part of our ecosystem on Earth, no matter how annoying they may be to humans. Unfortunately, bees have been disappearing around the world for some time now, and their mass disappearance continues to present new problems around the planet. According to Reuters news source, scientific researchers have been trying desperately for the past 15 years to understand why honeybees around the world are dying off at frighteningly high rates. Over 1 million bee colonies disappear every year, never to return, Reuters reporters noted in 2012. Kevin Hackett, the National Program Leader for the Bee and Pollination Program at the U.S. Department of Agriculture, USDA, called the massive honeybee disappearance the biggest general threat to our food supply. How could something so small be so important to us humans? Bees are used to pollinate many crops. For instance, a large portion of California's almond crop, which relies heavily on bee pollen. These are also essential for the pollination of apple and citrus fruit crops. Without the pollination by bees, these plants are unable to reproduce and may die off. The mass deaths of honeybees have been linked to something known as colony collapse disorder, CCD, a mysterious loss of bee colonies with many potential causes, as well as a variety of pesticides, parasites, and diseases, all of which hurt bee populations. Other possible causes include land development and changes in agricultural practices around the world. There are numerous kinds and species of bees, and honeybees are not the only ones disappearing in large quantities. Bumblebees can be added to the list of pollinators whose widespread disappearance worries scientists. While the dangers of losing bees, such as the damage to our food supplies, have long been known, researchers are uncovering even more distressing information about the loss of these ecologically crucial. According to researchers who published their findings in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences in 2013, the disappearance of bumblebees offers new cause for concern. Certain plants are having difficulties reproducing with the loss of their bumblebee pollinators and are at higher risk for extinction. Two scientists who conducted research on the impact of bumblebee loss on plant reproduction found that when a particular species of bumblebee was removed from the pool of pollinators, other bees did not completely take over the pollinating duties. Instead, with less competition from the bees which had been removed from the pool, the remaining bumblebees flew between many different plants and were less likely to be faithful to one kind of plant. The researchers noted this experiment had damaging effects. For instance, the larkspur, a purple wildflower, requires pollination from its own species, other larkspurs, to survive. The researchers found with fewer bumblebees, the remaining bees were less faithful to a particular plant, meaning the larkspur was unable to survive as it would have before the loss of bumblebees. This particular study highlights the importance of bees to the continuation of not just our food supply, but also all biodiversity, as the effects of this study do not end with the larkspur plant alone, but point to a much larger issue. The larkspur is just one example of this issue. In 2012, the USDA and Environmental Protection Agency, EPA, released a joint statement discussing the issue of bee loss and the search for a solution to the cycle of problems caused by bees dying off. The organizations concluded no single silver bullet will solve the problem affecting honeybees and other pollinators. In terms of solutions, the organizations proposed habitat enhancement, targeted pesticide use, improved colony management techniques, and improved disease and pest-resistant stocks of bees are collectively needed to improve the health of honeybee colonies. It is imperative that we increase honeybee survival both to make beekeeping profitable, the statement noted, but more importantly to meet the demands of U.S. agriculture for pollination and thus ensure food. Directions. These questions are based on the selection you just read. Mark your answers on the answer sheet by choosing the best answer. Number 1. What problem does this article mainly discuss? A. Bees can sting us. B. Bees can ruin outdoor gatherings. C. Bees are disappearing around the world. Number 2. Experts think that pesticides, parasites, and diseases, as well as land development and changes in agricultural practices around the world, are some possible causes of bee death. According to this article, what is the most important effect of this new bee shortage? A. Researchers are publishing new findings. B. Many crops will be unable to survive without pollination. D. Gardeners are having a harder time growing larkspurs. Number 3. In the article, Kevin Hackett, the National Program Leader for the Bee and Pollination Program at the U.S. Department of Agriculture, USDA, calls the massive honeybee disappearance the biggest general threat to our food supply. What evidence from the article supports this claim? B. Bees are used to pollinate many food plants, such as California's almonds crops, apple crops, and citrus food crops. C. The larkspur. Okay, I was interrupted, so I'm going to read number 3 again. In the article, Kevin Hackett, the National Program Leader for the Bee and Pollination Program at the U.S. Department of Agriculture, USDA, calls the massive honeybee disappearance the biggest general threat to our food supply. What evidence from the article supports this claim? B. Bees are used to pollinate many foods, such as California's almonds crop, apple crops, and citrus food crops. C. The larkspur, a purple wildflower, requires pollination from its own species, other larkspurs, to survive. D. Over 1 million bee colonies disappear every year, never to return. Number 4. Leaders from the U.S. Department of Agriculture, USDA, researchers from the National Academy of Sciences and Environmental Protection Agency, EPA, are all reported to be working hard to understand and solve the problem of the disappearance of honeybees. Based on this evidence, what can be concluded about the organizations trying to solve this problem? A. The organizations do not play an important role in keeping humans and the environment safe. B. The organizations play an important role in keeping humans and the environment safe. D. The organizations are being forced to deal with a problem they do not care about. Number 5. What is this article mostly about? B. The origins of the crops we eat. C. The science of bee population. D. The causes and the effects of bee death around the world. Number 6. What does the phrase silver bullet mean in the passage? A. A complex solution. B. An easy solution. C. A pollinating bee. Number 7. Choose the transition that best completes the sentences below. Bees are an incredibly important part of our ecosystem on Earth, no matter how annoying they may be to humans. Blank bees have been disappearing around the world for some time now, and their mass disappearance continues to present new problems around the planet. A. Instead, bees have been disappearing. C. However, bees have been disappearing. D. Finally, bees have been disappearing. Number 8. Which of the following is not a cause of mass deaths of honeybees? CCD, colony collapse disorder. A. C. Land development. D. Human consumption of honey. Number 9, one solution to protecting honeybees is to A, eat less honey, B, manage the bear population, C, target pesticide use. Number 10, the author's purpose is to A, inform, B, entertain, C, compare and contrast. New debate, password protected. Do schools have the right to monitor students' online activity? When you post a message on a social networking site, you probably don't expect your teacher or principal to read it. Neither did a 12-year-old girl in Minnesota who wrote an angry message about a fellow student on her Facebook page. When school authorities read that note and other inappropriate messages written by the student, they demanded that she give them her password. That incident, which led the American Civil Liberties Union to file a lawsuit, is one of several recent cases in which schools have disciplined students for bad online behavior outside of school. Many people believe schools have the right to punish students if their internet activity leads to bullying or class disruptions. Others think that punishing students for what they do on the web is the responsibility of parents, not schools. Do schools have the right to monitor students' online activity? Current Events student reporters Joseph Manin and Akish Bagaria each posted a side. Watch what you type. I believe schools have the right to monitor students' online activity. Young people need to learn that when you post something on the internet, there are consequences. Kids should not be misbehaving on social networking sites in the first place. Second, inappropriate online activity often comes in the form of cyberbullying. 14 states have passed anti-cyberbullying laws, and other states are considering them. If a school catches a student bullying someone online before the police do, the student is less likely to end up in legal trouble. Lastly, schools should have the right to punish students for online activity because doing so might save lives. If a student is bothering another student, the school could address the problem before the dispute gets physical. Peter Ivancic, a teacher from Haverhill, Massachusetts, agrees. If the students have done something worth taking the social networking site password, of course the school should take it, he says. Freedom comes first. Schools do not have the right to monitor what students do online outside of school. Monitoring students' online activity is an invasion of privacy and a violation of freedom of speech. Imagine teachers checking students' cell phones or spying on their after-school conversations. Tracking students on the internet is essentially the same thing. There should be a level of trust between teachers and students. Trust strengthens people's values of commitment and responsibility. Teachers should have faith that their students will follow the honor code and not partake in anything immoral online. Finally, the role of educators is to teach, not to monitor kids outside the classroom. Parents should oversee their children's actions and guide them in the right direction. Maria Shepard, a teacher at Princeton Day School in New Jersey, agrees. If the device is not school-owned and is not being used on school campus, schools should not monitor a student's online activity. If an issue arises, the student's parents could manage it. Directions. These questions are based on the selection you just read. Mark your answers on the answer sheet by choosing the best answer. Number 11. According to the passage, how many states have passed anti-cyberbullying laws? 10, B, 12, C, 14. Number 12. The passage shows two sides of this debate. Should schools have the right to monitor students' online activity? All of the following are arguments against schools having the right to monitor students' online activity, except A, monitoring students' online activity violates their freedom of speech, B, students need to learn that there are consequences to their actions. C, teachers don't have the right to monitor students outside of school. Number 13, according to the article, all of the following are arguments for schools having the right to monitor students' online activity, except B, teachers might be able to address the problem before it gets physical. C, teachers do not have the same legal rights as adults. D, punishing inappropriate online activity might save lives. Number 14, the author enhances the reader's understanding of the debate in all of the following ways, except A, by showing both sides of this debate. C, by stating several facts about the issue. D, by showing why one side is right. Number 15, read the sentence from the passage. Trust strengthens people's values of commitment and responsibility. In this sentence, the word commitment means A, loyalty, B, privacy, D, competition. Number 16, what was the author's purpose for including the opening paragraph when you post in this passage? A, to describe how inappropriate online behavior should be handled. B, to give an example of an incident that is the basis for the debate. D, to persuade teenagers to only post friendly messages on Facebook. Number 17, the question below is an incomplete sentence. Choose the word that best completes the sentence. Blank school authorities read several inappropriate messages written by a 12-year-old girl in Minnesota. They demanded that she give them her Facebook password. A, first, school authorities read several inappropriate messages. B, after school authorities read several inappropriate messages. Or D, so school authorities read. Number 18, what is the most common type of inappropriate online activity? A, cyberbullying. B, illegal downloading. C, plagiarism. Number 19, which text feature is not used in this passage? A, italics. C, enlarging of font size. D, highlighting. Grammar, Katyas. Read the incorrect sentence and then choose the correct version. I'm going to read just the first one and then you have to choose. Number 20. Bizarre, Sam muttered to himself as he took notes. The rest of the day went pretty much the same. Choose A or B. Number 21. The teachers, for the most part, were clad in dark colors and they had no sense of humor. Choose A or B. Number 22. Unfortunately, in science class, the friends found their old nemesis Owen. As they entered the room, Orson was holding court in the back between many of the popular kids. Choose B or C. Number 23. Ah, guys, look at the weird ones who just entered science class, Owen said maliciously. Choose A or B. Number 24. There's the witch that can't do a spell right, the four-eyed wise guy who knows it, all the free spirit that even wears stupid plastic butterflies in her hair, the crybaby, the lazy one who never has her homework, and the two that think they're funny. Choose A or C. Number 25. What losers, he stated, and he chuckled to his audience and encouraged them to laugh. Choose A or B. Literature, Escape from the Ice, Shackleton and the Endurance, by Connie and Peter Root, illustrated by Rob Doucette. Shipwrecked wrecked in the Antarctica. When Ernest Shackleton packed for his trip to Antarctica in July 1914, he seemed ready for anything. Among the items he and his crew stowed in his ship were cans of meat, a miniature pool table, a banjo, lanterns, a bicycle, and soccer balls. Shackleton hoped to become the first person to travel across the frozen continent at the bottom of the world. But nothing could have prepared Shackleton or his crew for what did happen. Instead of crossing Antarctica, they made history in one of the most incredible survival stories ever. Now, breathtaking photos of the doomed trip are being published for the first time in 2 books. For kids, Jennifer Armstrong's Shipwreck at the Bottom of the World, Crown, and for adults, Caroline Alexander's The Endurance. Stuck in miles of ice. Shackleton was already famous when he prepared for the 1914 trip. In 1908, he had come within 100 miles of the South Pole, but had turned back because of bad weather. By 1914, he was eager for another adventure. Nearly 5,000 people volunteered to go with him. Shackleton chose a crew of 26 sailors and scientists, plus a photographer, Frank Hurley. On the way to Antarctica, he picked up at least 69 sled dogs to pull the explorer on the long trek across land. Shackleton's last stop before heading for Antarctica was a whaling station on South Georgia Island. The Norwegian whalers told the crew that it was a bad year for ice. They were right. Upon entering the Weddell Sea, Shackleton was forced to zigzag through the dangerous ice sheets, sometimes passing more than 400 icebergs a day. On January 18, 1915, the ice closed around the ship. It was stuck, as one sailor put it, like an almond in the middle of a chocolate bar. Although he was less than 100 miles from Antarctica, Shackleton soon realized he could not possibly cross the continent that winter. The crew would just have to wait. Fighting boredom and cold. As the ship slowly drifted with the ice, the sailors played cards, listened to records, held singing contests, or got silly haircuts. This was before TV, says Armstrong. People were used to entertaining themselves. On the snow outside, the men built fancy dogloos with porches and domes. Some even slept with the dogs for warmth. Meanwhile, Frank Hurley kept busy taking photos, often braving the cold while others stayed indoors. He would do anything to get his shot. The ship was locked in ice for 10 months. By October 1915, the ice was crushing its thick wooden walls. It was a sickening sensation, Shackleton wrote in his diary. He ordered the crew to leave. They grabbed what they could, including 150 of Hurley's precious photos. A heroic rescue. The sailors struggled to reach land on 3 lifeboats. They dragged across ice and rode through frigid waters. They shivered in their thin coats, which often froze solid. At times they had to crawl through slush to avoid sinking. While killer whales swam around them, Shackleton and his men ate penguin and burned seal blubber for fuel. Sadly, when they ran out of food for the dogs, the crew had to shoot them. Eventually the crew landed on Elephant Island, but it was deserted. So Shackleton bravely set out again with 5 of his strongest men. They sailed and rowed 800 miles in a tiny boat, battling high waves, winds, and severe thirst. Finally, they landed at South Georgia Island, where they almost died climbing jagged peaks for 3 days before reaching the whaling station. The thought of those fellows on Elephant Island kept us going, said Shackleton. 4 months after Shackleton sailed away, one of the men on Elephant Island spotted a ship offshore. When it came closer, the crew recognized Shackleton. They began to laugh and hug. They were rescued. To the world's amazement, all 28 members of the Endurance expedition arrived home safely. How? Armstrong and the others say it is because Shackleton was a true hero. As the explorer said, if you're a leader, you've got to keep going. There's a map. Directions. These questions are based on the selection you just read. Mark your answers on the answer sheet by choosing the best answer. Remember to pay close attention to pictures, maps, text boxes, and headings. This selection is mostly about the exploration of Antarctica, C, a good photographer, D, survival near Antarctica. Number 27. When did Ernest Shackleton pack for his trip to Antarctica? B, January 1914, C, July 1914, D, just after 1914. 28. In this text, the best meaning for the word stowed is B, stored, C, threw away, D, hid.
Good morning, everybody.
Number 29. The name of this expedition was A, survival, B, endurance, D, Antarctica. Number 30. In the text, the ship is to an almond, as the ocean is to A, chocolate bar, B, a storm, D, an island. Number 31. According to the map, what direction was Shackleton and his crew mainly going in from South Georgia Island toward Antarctica? A, north, B, south, C, east. So you might want to look at the map. Number 32. Using the dates on the map, determine how long it took Shackleton and his crew to complete the trip. A, about 4 months, B, about 6 months, C, almost a year and a half. Number 33. After the sailors abandoned their ship, they had to eat meat from A, whales, B, penguins, C, dogs. Number 34. Shackleton was a true hero because A, he didn't give up, B, he never got lost, D, he took great pictures. Number 35. Approximately how many sled dogs were used on this expedition? A, 26, B, 69, C, 72. Number 36. At first, the sled dogs were A, tame, B, old, D, half wild. Number 37. The goal of Shackleton's expedition was to A, cross Antarctica, B, find sled dogs, D, take good pictures. Number 38. In the phrase, he would do anything to get his shot, the word shot means A, gunfire, B, vaccination, C, photograph. Number 39. On an earlier trip, how close had Shackleton come to the South Pole? A, 5,000 miles, C, 1,000 miles, D, 100 miles. Number 40. Why did Shackleton order the crew to leave the ship? A, ice crushing the walls, C, the ship crashed, D, they needed more photos. Number 41. The expedition began and ended at A, the South Pole, B, Elephant Island, C, South Georgia Island. Number 42. To fight off boredom, the sailors did all of the following except A, watch TV, B, held singing contests, D, listen to records. Number 43. The total number of men on this expedition was A, 26, B, 69, D, 28. Add it up. You may have to go back to the story for many of these. 44. When all crew members survived the expedition, the world was A, upset, B, amazed, C, disappointed. Number 45. In the phrase, a bad year for ice, Norwegian whalers told Shackleton's crew that they would encounter A, more ice than usual, B, less ice than usual, C, no ice. The Disappearing Man by Isaac Asimov. I'm not often on the spot when Dad's on one of his cases, but I couldn't help it this time. I was coming home from the library that afternoon when a man dashed by me and ran full speed into an alley between two buildings. It was rather late, and I figured the best thing to do was to keep on moving toward home. Dad says a nosy 14-year-old isn't likely to make it to 15. But in less than a minute, two policemen came running. I didn't wait for them to ask. "He went in there," I said. One of them rushed in, came out, and shouted, "There's a door open. He went inside. Go round to the front." They must have given the alarm because in a few minutes, 3 police cars drove up. There were plainclothesmen on the scene, and the building was surrounded. I knew I shouldn't be hanging around. Innocent bystanders get in the way of the police. Just the same, I was there when it started. From what I heard the police saying, I knew they were after this man Stockton. He was a loner who'd pulled off some pretty spectacular jewel robberies over the last few months. I knew it because Dad is a detective on the force, and he was on the case. "Slippery fellow," he said, "but when you work alone, there's no one to double-cross you." I said, "Doesn't he have to work with someone, Dad? He's got to have a fence." "Someone to peddle the jewels." "If he has," said Dad, "we haven't located him, and why don't you get on with your homework? He always says that when he thinks I'm getting too interested in his cases." Well, they had him now. Some jeweler must have pushed the alarm button. The alley he ran into was closed on all sides but the street, and he hadn't come out. There was a door there that was open, and he must have gone in. The police had the possible exits guarded. They even had a couple of men on the roof. I was just beginning to wonder if Dad would be involved when another car came up, and he got out. First thing he saw me and stopped dead. "Larry, what are you doing here?" "I was on the spot, Dad. Stockton ran past me into the alley." "Well, get out of here. There's liable to be shooting." I backed away, but I didn't back off all the way. Once my father went into the building, I got into his car. The driver knew me, and he said, "You better go home, Larry. I'm going to have to help with the search, so I can't stay here to keep an eye on you." "Sure, you go on," I said. "I'll be leaving in a minute." But I didn't. I wanted to do some thinking first. Nobody leaves doors open in New York City. If that door into the alley was open, Stockton must have opened it. That means he had to have a key. There wasn't time to pick the lock. That must mean he worked out of that building. I looked at the building. It was an old one, 4 stories high. It had small businesses in it, and you could still see the painted signs in the windows in the fading light. On the second floor window, it said Klein and Levy Tailors. Above that was a theatrical customer, and on the top floor was a jewelry store. That jeweler made sense out of it. If Stockton had a key to the building, he probably worked with that jeweler. Dad would figure all that out. I waited for the sound of shots, pretty scared Dad might get hurt, but nothing happened. Maybe Stockton would see he was covered and just give in. I hope so. At least they didn't have to evacuate the building. Late on Saturday, I supposed it would be deserted. After a while, I got tired of waiting. I chose a moment when no policemen were looking and moved quickly to the building entrance. Dad would be hopping mad when he saw me, but I was curious. I figured they had Stockton, and I wanted to see him. They didn't have him. There was a fat man in a vest in the lobby. He looked scared, and I guess he was the watchman. He kept saying, "I didn't see anybody." Policemen were coming down the stairs and out of the old elevator, all shaking their heads. My father was pretty angry. He said, "No one has anything?" A police sergeant said, "Donovan said no one got out on the roof. All the doors and windows are covered." "If he didn't get out," said my father in a low voice that carried, "then he's in the building." "We can't find him," said the sergeant. "He's nowhere inside." My father said, "It isn't a big building. We had the watchman's keys. We've looked everywhere." "Then how do we know he went into the building in the first place? Who saw he was a silence?" A lot of policemen were milling about the lobby now, but no one said anything, so I spoke up. I did, Dad. Dad whirled around and looked at me and made a funny sound in the back of his throat that meant I was in for it for still being there. You said you saw him run into the alley, he said. That's not the same thing. He didn't come out, Dad. There was no place else for him to go. But you didn't actually see him go in, did you? He couldn't go up the side of the buildings. There wouldn't have been time for him to reach the roof before the police, but Dad wasn't listening. Did anyone actually see him go in? Of course, no one said anything, and I could see my father was going to call the whole thing off. And then when we got home, I was going to get the talking to of my life. The thought of that talking to must have stimulated my brain, I guess. I looked about the lobby desperately and said, but Dad, he did go into the building, and he didn't disappear. There he is right now, that man there. I pointed, and then I dropped down and rolled out of the way. There wasn't any shooting. The man I pointed to was close to the door. He must have been edging toward it, and now he made a dash for it. He almost made it, but a policeman who had been knocked down grabbed his leg, and then everyone piled on him. Later, they had the jeweler, too. I went home after Stockton was caught, and when my father got home much later, he did have some things to say about my risking my life. But he also said, you got onto that theatrical costume bit very nicely, Larry. I said, well, I was sure he went into the building and was familiar with it. He could get into the costumers if he had to, and they would be bound to have policemen's uniforms. I figured if he could dump his jacket and pants and get into a policeman's uniform quickly, he could just walk out of the building. Dad said, you're right. Even after he got outside, he could pretend he was dealing with the crowd and then just walk away. Mom said, but how did you know which policeman it was, Larry? Don't tell me you know every policeman by sight. I didn't have to, Mom, I said. I figured if I got a policeman's uniform at the costumers, he had to work fast and grab anyone he saw, and they wouldn't have much of an assortment of sizes anyway. So I just looked around for a policeman whose uniform didn't fit, and when I saw one with trouser legs stopping above his ankles, I knew he was Stockton. Directions. These questions are based on the selection you just read. Mark your answers on the answer sheet by choosing the best answer. Number 46. The story is mostly about A, a boy who disobeys his father, C, a thief who outsmarts and escapes from police, D, a boy who helps catch a jewel thief. Number 47. What does the word fence refer to in this story? You may have to go back and read. A, a partner who helps sell stolen items. B, a white picket border around a garden. C, a barrier used to enclose a yard. 48. Stockton was not sneaky, A, C, honest, D, tricky. Number 49. Where and when does this story take place? A, Chicago early morning, B, New York City late afternoon, C, Chicago late afternoon. Number 50. The building Stockton ran into included all except which of the following businesses? B, appliance repair, C, jewelers, D, theatrical costumer. Number 51. Who said, Donovan said no one got out on the roof. All the doors and windows are covered. A, Larry, C, Stockton, D, a police sergeant. Number 52. What was Dad's attitude when he saw Larry at the building's entrance? A, happy, B, angry, D, enthusiastic. Number 53. What did Larry observe that led him to believe Stockton had a key to the building? B, the door was open and Larry saw him run in. C, there was not enough time to pick the lock and no one leaves a door open. D, all doors were closed and there was no way out of the alley. Number 54. What does a theatrical costumer provide? A, apparel for farmers. B, clothes for stage productions. C, shoes and jackets for little children. Number 55. How did Larry keep himself from getting into trouble? A, he solved the mystery. B, he went home. D, he witnessed the escape. Number 56. Which word does not describe Larry? A, curious. B, brave. D, lazy. Number 57. Which business in the building does Larry think the thief uses to peddle his goods? A, theatrical costumers. B, appliance repair. D, the jeweler. Number 58. What does Larry mean when he refers to innocent bystanders? B, people who are not guilty. C, people who help the criminal escape. D, people observing but not participating in the police work. Number 59. How did Larry identify Stockton? A, he saw his beard. B, his uniform did not fit properly. C, he knows all of the other policemen. Number 60. Why does Larry's dad want him to go home? A, Larry was in danger. B, Larry had to babysit his younger brother. D, Larry might disturb the evidence. Number 61. What character trait do Larry and Stockton share? A, creative. B, lazy. C, honest. Number 62. Stockton's escape plan would have worked except A, he mostly could blend in with all of the other police. C, the police search had turned up no suspects. D, he didn't pay attention to minor details. Number 63. What is the meaning of libel on page 19, third paragraph? A, unreliable. C, likely. D, guilty. Number 64. How does Larry's dad feel about him after he solved the mystery? A, angry and disappointed. B, concerned but proud. D, confused but happy. Number 65. The moral lesson of the story might be: a child should always obey his or her parents. B, the powers of observation should be respected in both young and old. D, don't interfere with police work. Genres. Number 66. Which of the following is not considered nonfiction? Biography, informational, or mystery? Number 67. Which genre uses fictional characters, is often set in the future, and has elements of science? A, science fiction. B, historical fiction. D, myth. Number 68. Which genre takes place in the past using real events with made-up characters? A, informational. B, historical fiction. D, myth. Number 69. Which genre includes events that could never happen in real life, may include characters that do not exist, and may include magic? A, fantasy. C, autobiography. D, fairy tale. Number 70. Determine the genre. Paul was playing fetch with his dog. He threw a stick and it landed 2 states away. His dog chased the stick and never returned. When Paul realized that his dog was gone, he sobbed. 2 days later, there was a lake outside his house. A, tall tale. B, historical fiction. D, fairy tale. Number 71. Determine the genre. He was born Walter Elias Disney on December 5, 1901, in a suburb of Chicago, to parents Elias Disney and Flora Call Disney. A, fantasy. B, historical fiction. D, fairy tale. Number 72, determine the genre. The goddess of wisdom, Athena, looked at her brother, the god Hercules. My brother is so strong and brave, she thought. Between my wisdom and his strength, together we can conquer anything or anyone. A, informational myth. B, historical fiction. D, myth. Figurative language, number 73. What type of figurative language compares two different things using the word like or as? B, personification. C, simile. D, onomatopoeia. Number 74. What type of figurative language uses the repetition of consonant sounds? A, alliteration. C, simile. D, onomatopoeia. Number 75. What type of figurative language uses human characteristics to things that are not human? A, alliteration. B, personification. D, hyperbole. Number 76. Determine the figurative language. Jimmy is so skinny, a skeleton looks fatter than he does. A, metaphor. C, simile. D, hyperbole. Number 77. Determine the figurative language. John is a mountain on the field. A, metaphor. B, personification. D, onomatopoeia. Number 78. Determine the figurative language. The trees danced by the shore. B, personification. C, simile. D, onomatopoeia.